Welcome everybody, both in the room here and watching this recorded live on our YouTube channel. We're very, very happy to have you with us today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between and outside of those binary definitions, we are one people, and we're coming very close to what is COP27. Almost 27 years of these climate negotiations. I feel like every time we say this is the crucial one, but we know this is becoming more crucial. We can't keep saying it's the last chance. We need to make huge changes in society, huge changes in economics. And of course, what underpins absolutely everything we do is energy. We cannot function and live. We cannot lift people out of poverty. We cannot progress and do what we all love to do, which is be together and live happy and fulfilling lives, which everybody has a right to do so. Energy is absolutely fundamental to solving massive aspects of the climate crisis today. We are hosting, well, not we, the next COP is being hosted in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh, and it begins in just under 2 weeks' time now. We all know there are huge amounts of changes that need to be made. There are lots of reports and different pathways. I myself have been looking at two, one from IRENA and one from IEA. I can pop some links in the chat, and that is the 2050 net zero pathways. Regardless how we look at it, we know we need to have huge reductions in carbon emissions by 2030. And this is even slightly conservative science from the IPCC 1.5 report. I mean, this isn't even radical things. We need to be pushing a huge change. There are going to be difficulties and challenges along the way. But I think there are two broad things we can take from this, and the three extinguished colleagues here will expand on that much better than I can. Firstly, the changes we need to make are possible. We have a lot of the technology available in the short term to make some of the significant changes we need to do to really put a dent in our carbon emissions. What's utterly lacking is the political will. And everybody in this room, regardless of how we might differentiate and how we get to the end result, we can appreciate as Greens that we can do this. And many of our countries, we can see the people in power are just not doing what they come to these moments and say they are doing. They're just not doing it. And it's up to us to learn, to come together, to share, to get consensus, and to put pressure on the people who really can make the decisions to take this forward and spend the money and make sure this happens. 2030, when I first started really talking about this, was, well, 12 years ago, 10 years ago. Now it's 7 years in time, and we must make massive changes very, very quickly. Second point is, really, again, there are nuances to this, but in broad headline aspects, there are two ways parts of the world need to change. The global north needs to get hugely efficient very, very, very quickly. It needs to massively reduce its energy consumption. It uses too much for the world. And we need to make sure the global south has access, and fair, equitable, and sustainable access. Again, I know there are a nuance to that, and I'm sure I can start a whole debate just from those two comments alone. But in a very, very broad headline kind of way, we have the technology, we know what we need to do, and we know which parts of the world need to do what. We just need to get going with it. All right. Enough from me, because there are three people in this webinar now, far more interesting, far more intellectual, and far more engaged in the subject matter than I am too. I'll do very, very quick introductions and then we'll get going. Just before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody inside and outside of those binary definitions, and I'd like a better way to say that, and please do let me know if there is a better way to say that. We are sending delegates to COP27 as the Global Greens. If you do not know, we are made up of 4 federations, the European, African, Americas, and Asia Pacific. We're working very hard to make sure that our international movement is properly and adequately and effectively represented. Unfortunately, this does cost a little bit of money, and unfortunately, that's not something that's so readily available. We do have a fundraiser going at the moment to make sure that everybody and all our delegates, we have 8 going, 2 from each federation, can be represented and can continue the work we've been planning and preparing for. And many people in this room and in this webinar have been a part of that. Tim, if you get a second, if you just put a link to the fundraiser in the chat. For this week, we've had a generous donor who will match any donation made this week. So this is a great opportunity for us to double our money and make sure we can get everybody to COP. If you've never been a part of this process and getting people there, it's really complicated, it's really tricky. Getting visas, accommodation in a resort. Who chose Sharm el-Sheikh as a place to have COP, but there we go. I think after rainy Glasgow, somebody wanted something sunny, I suspect. Anyway, that fundraiser is coming in the chat. Anything counts, 50 cents, €1. If you've got more, great. But for this week only, we have a generous donor who's doubling any donation made. And thank you to that person too. They're a wonderful person, as you all are. A couple of points, and this includes me too. We do have interpretation into French going on. If I could just remind our speakers today, Hesham, David, and Thomas, if you're like me and you get excited, I start talking quickly. So do bear in mind we do have interpreters going on, and thank you to Alba for doing that too. If you need interpretation, there should be a button at the bottom there as well. Next point is we know broadly what we need to do, and we are Greens and we all share common values. One of the values we share is the idea of listening to each other and understanding. We don't have to agree, that's okay. We know in this day and age, it can be very easy to be quick in how we write and how we present. Now, just please be mindful that if we are having debate, and please do, if we do have questions, that we treat each other with the respect and love and diversity and honesty with which we would like to be treated ourselves. All right, a small point, I just think that's worth making. So, without further ado, our three wonderful panelists today. Can I introduce Dr. David Schwartzman? He is a Brooklyn native from New York City, a geochemist by trade. He's been very, very active in the Climate Working Group. He's a member of the International and Eco Action Committee for the Green Party of the United States, and his research over many years has been focused on biochemistry, climate science, and eco-socialism. He's even managed, amongst all that, to write a book with his son in 2019 called The Earth Is Not for Sale, discussing climate change and renewable energy, ecological agriculture, degrowth, something that I'm particularly interested in, and eco-socialism too. You can chat with him if you want more details about that too. After David will be Dr. Hesham Ramadan. Let me just change my screen here, excuse me. This is a particularly pertinent COP for Hesham because he's from Egypt originally, although I think living in in Japan now, excuse me. He has a PhD in nuclear engineering, and he works upon nuclear reactor design, both fission and fusion reactors. Sometimes the nuclear word has a bit of a divisive opinion in the climate community, but there are aspects of a very nascent form of nuclear power. I forget whether it's fission or fusion, I'm really sorry, which could actually be very, very useful in how we solve ongoing energy. And Hesham will be presenting along those lines. Recently, he's worked with a team of Egyptian scientists and engineers developing real, renewable, sustainable power production system. And he is wholeheartedly dedicated to making the planet safer for everybody and minimizing and erasing environmental risks as well. Lastly, but not leastly, will be the wonderful Thomas Wu. Thomas is from Germany. Excuse me while I just change my screen over. Let me check. Okay, great. He works for the DGNI. In fact, not only works for, he's a partner and head of corporate and political advisory services. This is a German Society for Sustainable Industrialization, Ecological Education, and Crisis Prevention. He's a co-author of books establishing green economic ecosystems in Africa, and indeed spends a lot of his time, energy, and effort working in Africa. He has an extensive personal network with top executives and decision makers throughout China, Europe, Russia, Africa, and the Middle East, and as well as in international institutions too. I'm not going to say any more about him because he will tell you what he's doing, and he's doing some really, really wonderful work, which I think is very, very worth listening to. Thank you very much for joining us today. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor to Dr. David Schwartzman. David, again, we'll have about 12 to 15 minutes. I'll give you a little nudge when we're about 2 minutes in. All right, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for that very nice introduction. One correction, I think you said biochemistry. I'm biogeochemistry. Even though I was in a biology department, I could not teach the introductory courses or biochemistry. I taught my own. So I'm very honored to participate in this international webinar. And I will be happy to send a PDF of this presentation to anyone who requests it. My email is there, but I'll put it in the chat at the end. Next slide, please. There we go. So my talking points is basically, can we meet the 1.5 degree centigrade warming target? And if so, how? I would say yes, there is a shrinking possibility, but it's still possible. The challenges I'll be covering here are the military-industrial complex and its ongoing wars, extractivism, and of course, terminating all fossil fuel consumption in the next few decades, and the near future creation of sufficient global renewable energy capacity to eliminate energy poverty afflicting most of humanity, as well as implementing climate mitigation and adaptation. And I'll be discussing our Ames Energy paper that I did with my oldest son. Next slide, please. So to sum it up, my argument is to prevent climate catastrophe, defined as keeping warming at or below 1.5 degrees centigrade, global demilitarization, solarization of energy supplies, of course that includes wind and the solar technologies, and agroecologies, replacing industrial and GMO agriculture, to eliminate energy poverty and have the capacity to confront climate adaptation and mitigation. I've been arguing, along with my oldest son, that more energy than now consumed is necessary in the form of renewable energy, and particularly wind power, mainly sited in oceans, photovoltaics, and concentrated solar power in deserts. Next slide, please. Here is my take on nuclear power. The only nuclear power we need, I would assert, is found in the sun's core. It's fusion reactors supplying abundant energy to Earth. Building more nuclear fission reactors, that doesn't necessarily be an argument against immediately closing down all of them, but certainly decommissioning the ones that are unsafe. And the huge investment in on-site nuclear fission, I would argue, are unwelcome diversions from accelerating the creation of global wind solar energy supplies. Next slide, please. So here is the zombie militarized fossil capital, a zombie that's stalking the planet, ravaging humans and nature. Next slide. So the challenge of the military-industrial fossil fuel complex, obviously the current example is the Putin's criminal war in the Ukraine, and we now see a shift from Russian natural gas to liquid natural gas exports, a fracking boom. They just passed, unfortunately, they defeated a ban on fracking in the UK. And you can find out more from The Guardian and other sources. Next slide. To solve the climate, first achieve peace. And this was a very important editorial from a leading journal, Science, April 1st, 2022. The future of the planet is inextricably intertwined with international conflict. And this editorial made a very important point that to have any chance to address the climate challenge, we have to cooperate. The US and China have to cooperate. That's a challenge, but it must be met. Next slide. The challenge of extractivism, it's very real, and we have to confront it in this wind solar transition. To create a truly just process which protects the rights and health, particularly of indigenous people around the world, along with the workforce and communities affected. And we've argued that there are significant future opportunities to limit mining in this transition. First of all, recycling the huge supplies of metals now embedded in the fossil fuel and military infrastructure, with demilitarization and substituting common elements for rare ones. For instance, batteries using sodium and sulfur, iron and air, and so on, and enhancing public transit instead of relying on manufacturing hundreds of millions of electric cars. Next slide, please. So this is really a proposal for a 21st century solution to reduce and eliminate mining, increase recycling using renewable energy, and transitioning to a global steady state economy with industrial ecologies powered by wind and solar energy. As Frank emphasized, the quality and quantity of energy is fundamental to our challenge. Next slide, please. So now we get to my paper with my oldest son, Peter, who happens to be the mayor of Galesburg, Illinois, and he's a climate scientist like myself. Can the 1.5 degree warming target be met in a global transition to 100% renewable energy? That was the question posed in our paper that came out a year ago. We concluded, yes, it can be met with aggressive phase out of fossil fuels with the replacement by renewable over a 20-year period. And this transition must begin very soon. And we need this renewable energy supply once it achieves sufficient capacity to power aggressive negative carbon technology based on direct air capture for crustal storage. Let me emphasize, this is not the net zero prescription that the fossil fuel industry is aggressively proposing. That is to keep on burning fossil fuels and use these, not this technology in particular, but others to store carbon or trap it. This is not an argument for that. This is once enough renewable energy is created globally, it is very likely we'll have to do this because the natural processes like restoring natural ecosystems, agroecologies that store carbon in the soil, they are very important as to start immediately, really. But as additional warming occurs, even keeping below the 1.5 degree target, this capacity will be reduced because of respiration of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So we'll need to rely, we argue, on direct air capture, and more efficient technologies in the near future will make this transition easier and promote the implementation of a global circular economy, that is industrial ecologies. And we argue in our modeling, in this modeling paper, that no more than 1.5 times the present level will be necessary to create the capacity to eliminate global energy poverty and for climate mitigation and adaptation. Next slide, please. So the social challenge is huge. Most of humanity is in a state of energy poverty, living mainly in the global south, but also in pockets of the global north, including my own community, Washington, D.C., where low-income people often don't have income to heat their homes or air condition in our hot, humid climate in the summer. So we need to also confront the wasteful consumption of energy, as Frank pointed to, in most of the global north, especially the United States. Next slide, please. So this is actually the pioneer of this particular relationship is Vladimir Schmil, the great Canadian geographer. And we've been very instructive in this. And if you plot life expectancy at birth versus energy use per person, that is the total primary energy consumption divided by the population, we get this relationship. And the minimum requirement for a highest life expectancy is likely, looks like about 3 kilowatt per person. That is in power units. If you want to know how much energy that would be, you multiply by the time. So that would be 3.5 kilowatt year per person. That would be roughly what Italy is now consuming, around that. And you see to the left of this line, which is, this was Smill's estimate, about 3.5 kilowatt per person. We see that most of humanity is living below the highest achievable life expectancy. Now, it's important to point out that countries to the right, like the United States, which now ranks about 50 in the world in life expectancy, just below Cuba, by the way, just below Cuba. There are other factors that drive low life expectancy. In particular, income inequality, the lack of investment in public health, and so on. Next slide.
Just 2 more minutes, Dr. David.
Thank you. Thank you. So here's a new publication I just got, Earth for All, a Survival Guide for Humanity. Bill McGibbon praised it. Collapse is now avoidable. Here's how. Very distinguished authors, but this survival guide proposes a global warming leveling off at 1.8 degrees by 2100, not 1.5 degrees, which is for their what they call the Great Leap scenario. I would argue this is a prescription for climate catastrophe. And I include a recent paper, very recent paper, exceeding the 1.5 degree global warming could trigger multiple climate tipping points. Sea level rise from collapsing ice sheets, dieback of diverse biomes such as Amazon and so forth. And of course, the carbon release from thawing permafrost. Next slide. I only have a couple more. So the prescription of this Great Leap scenario also, we argue, is insufficient level of renewable energy to address the challenges I've already outlined. And I include my critique of this paper. Next slide. So there's also a new insight in climate mitigation that I'm sharing in my slides. And again, please email me and I'll send you the PDF. And this is addressing the short-lived climate pollutants like methane and nitrous oxide, which comes from the mainly from the breakdown of nitrate fertilizers in soil that are used in industrial agriculture. And this promises to slow the rate of warming and be certainly a complement to terminating fossil fuels. Last slide, I think, next to last. So promoting a global Green New Deal and what I would argue an eco-socialist transition, leaving fossil capitalism in prehistory where it richly deserves to be. Controversial? Yes. Next slide. So what should grow and what should degrow? There's a big discourse and discussion about degrowth. So I would argue and have argued that we need to grow certain things like obviously renewable energy supplies, green affordable housing, and the social governance of the economy, and degrow, first of all, the military industrial complex. Looking forward to a demilitarized world at peace. The last slide, I think. Thank you. Here's our book website and very last one. This is my logo. Radical and radish have the same root. Be as radical as reality itself. Radical being going to the root. Thank you. And I have a reading list. And next, I won't even show it, but I'll share it. Thank you. Thank you for the time. I hope I kept to it.
Thank you very much. And thank you for making me laugh as just about to start speaking again, Dr. David. That was great. Brilliant. Lots of excellent points in there. Thank you very much. And I think you win the competition for the most last slides as well, my friend. Well done. Good on you. Lots in there as well. Some people may agree with a lot of that. Others may disagree slightly or what have you. We know there are not easy solutions to the crises we face, you know. And I think a lot of that's come down to it is the fact that on a large scale, the people governing us and making big decisions have been kicking the can down the street for far too long. And here we are having to make very difficult decisions about how we are going to progress and how we are going to keep to 1.5. We know going over 1.5 has huge implications for everything that we hold dear and everything we hold true. Sometimes people many years ago used to say, oh, Frank, you saving the earth. Saving the earth, we're saving people. This is what we're trying to do, have a safe and habitable planet where I feel like our children can live and we can continue this existence, because it's a wonderful thing being alive. Thank you, Dr. Davis. Some great points in there. I think solving the climate, first achieving peace, not an easy thing, but we know international coordination and international cooperation is absolutely essential. We can't have one person not doing it and starting things off. And we know there are big issues in the world, not least in Europe, where I'm based now as well. I think issues with extractivism, with renewables, are something that need to be faced, and the idea of degrowth, the idea of circular economies, the concepts of donut economics. These are new ideas. They're sort of theoretical at the moment, but a lot of cities, a lot of economies, a lot of businesses working hard to try and implement them. And we've got to put it all in, and we've got to try and make it work. Thank you very much for that. Well, I'm very honored to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Hesham Ramadan. Are you based in Japan at the moment? Is that where you're speaking from, Hesham? Yep, you're muted, sorry. Go on. You're muted. Let me... Go on, then. You're in Japan right now, Dr. Hesham? No. I don't know why, but we can't hear you. Let's just give you a second. I can see you have your microphone off. Just to check your connection. It was certainly working before when we were testing, wasn't it? Which is always the way. Just to turn it off, turn it on again. The engineer in me to know that trick.
Could you unplug your connection and plug it back in, please?
You're back. You're good. You're there. That's it. A glitch. There we go. A glitch in time makes 9, I think, is the expression. Lovely. Thank you, Dr. Hesham. Sorry, are you based in Japan right now, or are you?
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, yes.
All right.
I'm based on Japan now.
Yep.
I'm living in Japan, but I'm Egyptian.
Yep, exactly. I just wondered if you've gone back to Egypt for the COP at all, or you were heading back over.
I don't think I will have a time to be there because I'm still working. So
Exactly. Well,
I'm really sorry about that. I would like to really.
Absolutely, I'm sure. Well, you're doing good things, and let's let you continue that.
I hope today we go a little bit from nuclear to some renewable. I will show my philosophy about a design up, because okay, let's just speak up and things will come on the time.
I'm conscious that perhaps what you're presenting might seem slightly different to what has just been spoken about, but that's okay. We are a broad movement. We got lots of different ideas, and part of what we're doing here today is to share all the good work.
Okay.
So would you like to begin?
Okay, let's begin, and then we will talk.
All right, on you go. You appear not to have any sound again, Dr. Hesham. Apologies for that. I don't know if there's a connection perhaps, or not yet, no. Oh, there was a crackle then.
Can you hear me now?
I think that was the crackle of connection. Yes, I think we have you now. Wonderful. That's not working. Do you have a microphone in your computer? It might be worth unplugging and going on the external microphone, perhaps. If it's your, if
Can
your
you hear me
headset.
now?
We can hear you now. Yeah,
You can hear me now.
that's it. We got it.
Okay. And you can see my screen.
Yeah, go for
Okay.
it.
So today my talk will be about, okay, at the beginning I have to welcome everybody here and thanks for inviting me for this valuable meeting and to share my ideas with other people and talking about global green and carbon-free world, which is one of the problem I'm always thinking about it. Even I'm working in nuclear, but it was one of the things we always look for. So now my talk will be about carbon-free world challenges of future energy security. How to, okay, I'll go to the next. Okay. So my talk today will be about energy transition and security. Then I will make a brief comparison between renewables and the nuclear. And after that, we will see which one which direction we have to go for, either renewable or nuclear. So I don't think moment we will not be able to take one of them out and keep the other. Then I will talk about hydropower, which dams we are built on the river and how this hydropower contribute for water shortage. Then I will talk about something I'm calling it like a change of lane. It's a new system which utilizing seawater to produce electricity, and we will see what this system for. And then I will make a brief talk about hydro renewable sustainable. And first time to talk in public about this system, basically. I didn't show it to anyone yet. And today it's the first time to talk about it. Okay. I will go to the next slide. To shut down the fossil fuel.
Sorry,
Okay.
Doctor, could you
Yes.
could you unplug your headphones and let's try
Again?
that. Just unplug it and keep it off, and let's try that instead. Can you try and speak? How's that?
Let's speak.
Yeah,
Can you hear?
much better. If you just want to continue like that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Please continue.
Okay. If it's this is suitable for all of you, I will keep going with that. Okay, now we talk about energy transition and security. We all need to shut down fossil fuel power stations, but we have to ensure high energy security and sustainability means of energy generation. Our goal is to achieve a carbon-free means of power generation that makes economical, environmental, and public acceptance. Both renewables energy and the nuclear energy are carbon-free, but which one we have to select and which direction we have to go for. We only have to like carbon-free power. This is or dislike climate change. This is our problem now. But we don't have to like nuclear power or ever want to build another nuclear power plant to believe that existing source of carbon-free power should be kept running as long as practicably possible. So now we are looking for a practical solution. Okay. in my next, let us have a look at a comparison between nuclear energy and renewable energy before we come up with a conclusion. On the left-hand side, those are advantage of renewable energies, and on the right-hand side, a nuclear advantage. If we look for the cost, renewable energy are really cheaper than nuclear. It's really much cheaper than nuclear. And the construction timeline, yes, if we have to build a small power stations, even for the same amount of power generated, we will have the same timetable or timeline for construction, but renewable energy can be small units and it can be working faster than nuclear, because in the nuclear construction, we have to set up the whole unit before any operation. Quality of life, and this is one of the real strong factor for renewable energy. Renewables allow for potential energy independency, and in turn, a better quality of life. Nuclear cannot offer this because by nature, it is a centralized power source. So if you look for Africa, for example, African countries, they don't have even a single nuclear power plant. Now Egypt started to build one, but we don't know when it will be starting. Okay, for nuclear energy production, nuclear energy has a capacity factor of 90%, while the capacity factor of solar and wind 27 and 36 respectively. Life cycle emission, and this is, I mean, like, this will be a surprise for some of you. Nuclear is better choice in terms of cycle carbon emission, with 12 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. Solar and wind emissions are 44.05 and 10.9 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour, respectively. Land use, wind required 238 times land per kilowatt than nuclear, and solar PV requires roughly 46 times the amount of land. Resilience, renewables are very susceptible to harsh environments. Therefore, nuclear is more resilient in this regard. Okay, this is a small comparison between nuclear and renewable, or renewables and nuclear, basic points. And for sure, for public acceptance, renewable energy is going ahead by far distance from nuclear. Nuclear now is not accepted by public, for sure. Okay, if you go to the next, then what will be our decision? Which direction we have to go for? I believe team effort is needed here. Team effort means we cannot say one is out and one is in for now. For energy security, we need a lot of carbon free and we need it fast. This is our aim, and our goal is to have a carbon free environment or carbon free energy sources. That's where renewable energy comes in. It is cheaper to produce than nuclear. It is extremely scalable and allows for improved energy independence. This is not to say nuclear should be ignored. Far from it, actually. Nuclear has a capacity factor of about 3 times that of renewable energy, uses 238 times less land than wind power, and has lower carbon life cycle emission. That's efficiency for you. But nuclear is difficult to offer for the South. Okay, another problem, we don't know about it, or I don't know, it's a new team from Netherlands. They been investigating the hydropower and water shortage. And their title was $1 billion dams are making water shortage, not solving them. Those interventions primarily involve dams that takes water meant for irrigation or sites or to generate hydroelectricity. The team found a drastic reshuffling of water scarcity hotspots over time, with mostly people upstream benefiting from the capture of river flows, but those downstreams left high and dry. The world has spent an estimated $2 trillion on dams in recent decades, but this activity has left 23% of the global population with less water, compared with only 20% who have gained. Okay.
2 minutes, please.
Okay, hydro renewable sustainable. So I and Egyptian engineers, we made a team to think about how to solve the energy shortage in the world now. So we put some factors to think about it, like renewability, energy dependency, and size of the power plant, cost of megawatt, sustainability and availability factor, and waste. So, and finally, all our thinking lead us to start thinking about a new system, and this is how HRS system was built or born. Okay, hydro renewable sustainable. HRS is an innovative design to utilize sea or ocean water to produce electricity, and this is sustainable energy. Is not depend on HRS can be customized to offer power according to the application and the available site. HRS can be a solution to industrial loads, which renewable is not good at this point, as well as residential loads. System is simple, robust, and made of proven technology. Unlike renewable energy systems, HRS is completely isolated and does not depend on any external condition. Unlike freshwater hydropower, HRS does not need large water tanks or storage areas, or depends on rain amount. HRS availability would be comparable to nuclear power station availability, no carbon emission, and safe, and no waste is produced. And finally, I would like to share with you this table for our effort and some of our design megawatt for just this system, and we can produce a good amount of energy for just single unit, and the single unit is site or the land size is really small compared to a renewable energy right now. So I just go back again, and let me just stop here. We done the conceptual design already done, and a small scale experiments had been done also to prove our methodology, but we are now looking for making a pilot in some area, and from the pilot we will get to a detailed design for commercializing this system. I think we are just for a few months from this system to get into.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr.
And I would like to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak up with all of you. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Hesham. You did great there. As it shows, there are a lot of options going forward, and perhaps one reflection I might have, we had that slide with sort of renewables versus nuclear. We know some kind of mix happens already, so perhaps looking at it in terms of a dichotomy versus perhaps isn't quite correct, and there are different ways we can go forward. But particularly the slide you're showing at the end there shows there are very new, reliable and consistent forms of renewable energy, which perhaps can be tapped into. So please do keep up the good work as well. All right.
Thank you so much.
I think a couple of people have reached out to you in the chat there, so do jot down emails, and if you wish to connect with those people, and likewise with anybody here, you're welcome to do so, and that quotes for all.
I already wrote my email on the chat system. If anybody wants to contact me or reaching this, we can, because I am from Egypt. It's a South country, and would like to introduce this system to the whole world, hand on hand. And okay, absolutely. Thank you.
We're all here to work together, and this is a great opportunity to connect. Sorry for interrupting you there, but I do want to give our
I'm not talking about nuclear now. No nuclear, huh?
All right. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. All right, then. Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Hesham. That was really, really insightful and very valuable. Without further ado, I'm going to skip right through to our last speaker. And I might go a little bit over the hour, ladies and gentlemen, and people in and out of those binary definitions. If anyone has any questions they'd like to ask at the end, and perhaps if our panelists, if you want to look through the Q&A that's going on, perhaps you are answering the questions already, you can do that directly. I might skip over. I want to give Thomas more than adequate time that he deserves to talk about his great work. So we might go about 5 minutes over or so, if that's okay. All right, then, without further ado, I am honored to introduce Thomas Wu. Thomas, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Let me share the screen with you. Okay. Thank you so much, Frank, and hello to everybody. It's great to be here. Unfortunately, I could not prepare so much for today, so I will give you some general overview of what I'm doing and give you some example of our more practical work. You will get all the presentation. Just for your background, I have basically two hats on. On the one hand side, my commercial hat. I'm founding member of DJNI, which is a German-based company which is developing sustainable projects in emerging markets. But I'm also member of the executive board of DSE Green Technologies, which is one of the largest now manufacturers of renewable energy equipment and green hydrogen equipment. About 2.5 years ago, we started together with Steinbach University in Germany and the Export Academy, to develop a comprehensive initiative, how to develop very large-scale green hydrogen projects in the preferred regions for green hydrogen. And under our leadership, we formed a consortium with 18 German technology companies in order to develop the most sophisticated, but also the most scalable equipment for the green hydrogen segment. I think I can go quickly say, I think there's no doubt that the green hydrogen market is going through the roof. We're expecting it's going to be a $135 billion market by 2031. But the key challenge and the bottleneck is really the equipment. Yeah, when we look at today, total equipment capacity worldwide is less than 20 gigawatt of production capacity to produce electrolyzer. And therefore, we said early on, we have to invest in capacity and we have to transfer this capacity to the regions where the capacity is needed. So where can you produce effectively green hydrogen? At the end of the day, it's only 5 regions in the world. Yeah, it is a region around Namibia, Mauritania, Egypt, South Oman, and West Australia. Everybody else, I tell you, it's a hobby hydrogen production. Yeah, and it's a waste of money. So if the world really wants to produce efficiently and competitive green hydrogen, we have to focus on these 5 areas, because these areas have sufficient sunshine, sufficient wind, sufficient space where you can produce the green hydrogen. This is at least our belief, and that's why we are pushing basically to industrialize now these green hydrogen opportunities. We have chosen Namibia as our main hub for production because of the stability of the compliance, of the transparency of Namibia. Just to comparison, Namibia even is ahead of Greece, Italy, Spain in terms of transparency and stability. This is our localization in the Southern African region. We have similar localization plans also for other regions. In Namibia, we are building a 20 gigawatt PV plant over the whole value chain, meaning from the mine to the polysilicon, to the wafer, ingots, cells, and modules. So we will be able to produce 20 gigawatt of panels in Namibia. That means, just to give you an idea, we are producing there roughly 70 million solar panels per year, yeah, in our plant in Namibia. And we are building a 30 gigawatt electrolyzer plant. Yeah, so that means when you consider the world capacity, today is 20 gigawatt, you know, we not only double the world capacity on electrolyzers capacity, we even are beyond this. And this is what we then can produce every year in terms of electrolyzing capacity. And we go for PEM technology as well as alkali technology for the ones who are deeper in the hydrogen segment. We're also going to produce in South Africa CSP and direct air capturing, yeah, because this is part of our program. So we will also be the largest producer of CO2 direct air capturing units. As I said, DSE technologies, you know, we concentrate on photovoltaic, on thermal solar, electrolyzers, and direct air capturing. Just to give you some quick numbers, just to update you, you saw in the presentation before that PV cost per kilowatt hour was about 41 to 42 cents. And we are now, I think 4.2 cents, Dr. Rahman, I believe. In any event, what we have now is that our new solar panels, we will produce power here for 1.1 cent per kilowatt hour, 1.1. Yeah, and this because of our higher efficiency of the panels and the higher temperature resistancy. Yeah, so we will be technology leader in Namibia with these new panels. This is a technology beyond what the Chinese producers have. Yeah, and we will introduce this new technology now in the coming weeks into the global markets. When it comes to our electrolyzer technology and combined with solar, you know, we will be able to produce 1 kg of hydrogen for less than $2. Here I still have $2.5, but because we could also improve the efficiency of our stacks now, and we presented this last week, we will be able to produce 1 kg hydrogen for $2. Yeah, so that is the benchmark now globally, and therefore, just to give you an idea, we will be able to produce green steel with a hydrogen steel plant for less than $400. So we will be really competitive, you know, to the fossil fuels. We will be even cheaper than utilizing fossil fuels. And at the end of the day, that will enhance the transition if we find sustainable, but also reliable and feasible technologies in order to compete with the fossil fuels. When it comes to air capturing, here we are about 5 to 10 years ahead of our competition with our DUC system. We can capture 1 ton of CO2 for less than $80. Yeah, all our competitors are beyond $250, and we will be able now to produce these units roughly with a capacity of 500,000 tons per year. That is the initial capacity, and we will increase that as well. Yeah, so basically absorbing CO2 out of the atmosphere will be one critical element to reach the goal of 1.5 degrees. And I think we have here clearly a technology breakthrough. We developed this together with the German company Bosch and GreenCap from Norway and several others who were in the consortia. And we will also present this new technology at COP27. So this was my commercial hat. As I said, I also have the hat as advisor to the Climate Change Secretariat, and I'm also working as advisor to UNICA, which is United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. So for Africa, we developed now several projects, as you rightfully indicated before. We already looking at the consequences of climate change, and you can see here in the yellow and orange marked countries, they won't be able to feed their population anymore within the next 6 to 8 years. It's very clear, yeah, because of the influence of the consequences of climate change. Therefore, we started a public-private partnership, and we called it Breadbasket for Africa, where in the green marked countries, we develop large-scale smart farming special economic zones, yeah, where we utilize then latest technology from stratospheric drones to RE and other tools, to increase the efficiency of the agricultural sector in Africa. And we also utilize there our CO2 direct air capturing technology in order to utilize the captured CO2 in order to enhance the productivity in the agricultural sector. At the end of the day, we must clearly say Africa can feed the world. When it comes to the land, when it comes to the capacity we could get out of it, just if we use technology, if we use proper fertilizer, organic fertilizer, and we would not have a hunger crisis anywhere, if we utilize particularly this breadbasket properly. And this is one of the major projects we are supporting also as DSE. The other initiative we are starting now to discuss at COP27, and this was my initiative to convince basically the industrial world to fund an emergency organization, rescue organization for the countries which are mainly faced with consequences out of climate change. And you will see here at the equator, and you can see it here on the African map, the very dark red and red regions. These will be the regions mostly affected by climate change. Yeah, and as you could see in the news, just a week ago, we had major flooding in Nigeria. 600 people died again, and the people did not have the proper rescue material, equipment, teams. Yeah, same in Kenya. I remember the first major floods in Kenya ever were in 2019. I was there, that was 2 weeks before Christmas, 250 people died. They didn't even have boats to rescue the people out of the floods, and not even talking about helicopters. Yeah, so one of the initiatives we are starting with the Climate Change Secretariat to propose at COP27 to the industrial world that we initiate these African Agency of Technical Relief, so we can station basically here in the West as well in the East these camps which are constantly there, and that the rescue people can reach the disaster areas within 6 hours. Yeah, instead of sending them from Europe or the US or wherever. Yeah, and that is extended, of course, to Latin America and to Southeast Asia. So there will be basically at the end of the day about 8 major stations where we're going to have rescue equipment. And this is something we developed here at the Greens in Germany, and I proposed this now to the United Nations. And I think we have great feedback from everybody to implement this, also to give a signal to the developing world and to the global south that we care about the people and their lives. What is also part of that mission is that we are, and this is again, this is through my foundation, I'm supporting this initiative. We're going to set up 5 hubs in Africa with stratospheric drones. Yeah, these drones fly in a magnitude of 30 kilometers, and we have developed an own RE to make forecasts for disasters. So we can say days before where we expect major natural disasters. So we're going to have, as I said, 5 centers with the main data center in Botswana, where we then basically capture data from the stratospheric drones, and then through our RE we can give warnings in terms of natural disasters.
Thomas, thank you.
2 more minutes?
Just 1 more minute, yes, please. Thank you.
Oh, okay, sorry. Then another initiative, I spoke with Frank about it. We are forming a Pan-African Technology Transfer University, where we transfer basically the newest technology when it comes to renewable energy and other technologies to the African people, because one of the key problems for localizing the production in Africa is missing human resources and qualified human resources. So we will set up this university in 4 different countries, covering all the 4 different regions. And this is what I wrote also my book about. It's basically how to develop successful green economic ecosystems. And this was also part of my work for UNICA, that, for example, we formed a strategic alliance between the Democratic Republic of Congo and UAE, where UAE now is committed to buy all the carbon credits which we generate through our rainforest conservation project, yeah, which is about $1.5 billion per year for the next 25 years, which is floating then into Congo, where we can do sustainable development, starting from batteries to, let's say, sufficient housing, sustainable housing projects, organic fertilizer projects, and so on green data centers. So just this as an example, how we create green ecosystems on the continent. And this is other samples, how we basically step-by-step develop basically job creation projects on a sustainable way. Because one of our philosophies is, at least for the Southern globe, it is not about reducing CO2 emissions, it is about building up sustainable industrialization in order to develop proper lives and to ensure food and energy security. So that was in a nutshell what I'm doing. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Thomas. And what a fascinating nutshell that was as well. And well done for getting such a lot of detail and information in such a short amount of time. And at the last minute too, those still with us might notice we had a slight change of lineup. Unfortunately, we had someone fall ill and someone called into Parliament. And Thomas just stepped in at last minute, well, just last evening. And that was really, really valuable. For those that do or don't know about hydrogen in particular, there are quite a few different colors of hydrogen, but a lot of the work is in blue and green. Blue relies on carbon capture storage. It still uses fossil fuels. CCS is still a largely unproven and not demonstrated task. So I was really interested to see that only green hydrogen can work in a few places in the world as well. And green hydrogen, if people don't know about hydrogen, it's the most abundant gas, I think, in the universe, but it doesn't exist very much as a gas on Earth. And so you need to process it to release it as a gas. And of course, renewables is the best way to do that too. And that's fascinating. I think really interesting to hear about Africa potentially being the breadbasket of the world. That could solve a lot of problems, even for the imbalance between the global north and the global south too. And I really thought it was really empowering to hear about this sort of technology and resource transfer. As we know, the world has been built on unequal foundations. And I think a lot of the work you're talking about is definitely working to redress that and not just be directional in how we're going forward. So thank you very much, Thomas. I'm sure I've not done you justice in how I've summarized that there by any stretch of the imagination, but I look forward to hearing more of your work too. Dr. Hesham, I really appreciated what you're saying and the balance between renewables and nuclear too, but the power of HRS and the validity of that. We all know the renewables are the way to go. How we do it, how quickly we can roll it out, and how we can do that with the least amount of impact is the way we need to go. We have such a narrow window to make sure we keep under 1.5. And that brings me to our last, or who was our first speaker, Dr. David Schwartzman, who really well encapsulated a lot of the heart of the issues of the climate movement, the absolute imperative work we need to do to keep under 1.5 and the change in society and the economy we can have to do that. The answers are all here. There's much more we can talk about renewables and energy transition, but as we know just from this short presentation, the answers are here. The will is here. There is smart, intelligent, clever, well-grounded people working very, very hard to make sure that happens. I think our job as a green movement is to work and empower this, to get Greens in power, to get Greens in government, to do that because we know that can make a big change, and where we are not, to keep putting pressure and to keep making sure we keep shouting and fighting, and we'll fight to the very end. And I'm sure we will work towards having a fairer and just and sustainable world. Lastly, I would like to thank Albert, our wonderful translator. You're doing great work. Thank you so much for your work there. I'd like to thank you for everybody at home. We will be putting this up on the YouTube channel so you can share it later on. With that, I can put links to the presentations as well, and we'll have that on our website too. One more time, if you can donate to our fundraiser, we'd really appreciate that to make sure we get our diverse and representative delegation to COP27, where, let's be honest, is all to play for. Time is running out, and together we can make sure we can get the people who make the decisions to make the correct decisions and spend the money where they need to. Thank you very much to everyone at home. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.
Frank, I'm going to send you an updated PDF, yeah, in a
Please.
second.
We can just
And
stop on.